gotta tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
That. Let's talk about that.
You need this. Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Mighty remarkable, Big Daddy.
Remarkable.
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose, to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. This week, we're talking about B2B marketing lessons from How I Met Your Mother with the help of our special guest, Director of Content Marketing at AssemblyAI. Kelly Moon. Kelly, how are you?
Hey, I'm excited to be here.
Excited to have you on the show. We're going to chat about AssemblyAI. We're going to chat How I Met Your Mother and your background and everything in between. But first, why the heck did you pick How I Met Your Mother?
So something we discussed in our prep call was the fact that the topic of how is endlessly interesting. And I know we'll get into it a little bit later about why the simple premise is so effective in storytelling. But I personally picked How I Met Your Mother because it is endlessly interesting and a memorable show in my mind that keeps people coming back for more, even years after it finished.
And zooming out, tell us about AssemblyAI and your role as Director of Content Marketing.
Ooh, okay. All right. You're not giving me a time limit, right? So I can explain it for a while. So
technically, there is a time limit. You can't filibuster. Although I don't know when we would stop you. If you went for like 3 hours, are we going to cut you off? I don't know.
I know.
We've never had it happen.
I give you permission to cut me off. But okay, let me explain AssemblyAI. AssemblyAI, they offer speech AI models through an API. So what's cool about it is that product teams and developers can use our models to build really powerful AI solutions that are based on voice data for their users. So a lot of developers are building with our speech AI models every day to run speech to text on multilingual speech. And then they're leveraging large language model capabilities to take insights from that voice data. And that's a lot of jargon, which is why I said it might take me a second. When you think about a large language model, a lot of folks think about ChatGPT. And so you can do tasks like answering questions from your transcription, generating content, extracting metadata really instantly with our speech AI models. And AssemblyAI has just done a really good job of producing and launching these really fantastic speech AI models. So a lot of customers like Spotify and CallRail and Bead, which help people video edit, they're trusting us to basically accelerate their roadmap and help them to build better products for their users. So in my role as Director of Content Marketing, it's about boosting organic traffic to the site. It's about driving demand into the self-service funnel. But in simpler terms, it's really just about getting people to know about us and who we are and how we can solve their problems and how we can ultimately help them innovate and improve their own products.
Meredith, what the heck is How I Met Your Mother?
So in 1997, these two dudes, Carter Bays and Craig Thomas, had just graduated from Wesleyan University in Connecticut, and they landed somehow as their first job. They became staff writers on The Late Show with David Letterman. That's another story. But anyway, while working on the show, they saw these other writers sort of graduating to writing on sitcoms.
That is Meredith O'Neill, our amazing producer extraordinaire.
And they thought that'd be their next logical step. So for the next few years, they were like, okay, we're going to get credits on sitcoms. So they started working on shows like Quintuplets, Method and Red, 2 shows I'd never heard of. But they also worked on American Dad.
Good morning, USA.
I got a feeling that it's gonna be a wonderful day. The sun in the sky.
So that's when, in the early 2000s, they had decided to pitch their own show. And this is really interesting. Like Bay said, it's funny how I Met Your Mother just sort of happened naturally. I feel like there's so few times we hear where like something just happens naturally for
Seriously.
any of the pieces of content that we cover. But he said it was actually the second thing we pitched. The first thing we pitched was the story of an Enron executive who gets sentenced by the judge to go teach at an inner city high school, which, you know, sounds like a great show. But from page one, neither of us wanted to do any research. We were just kind of like, I don't know, it's probably like this. And the whole thing just rang completely false. But the other idea was just, well, let's write about our friends and the stupid stuff we did in New York.
So, Saturday night, time to cut loose, right? Who wants to split a beer?
Oh, we're not drinking here. Tonight we're going big. Let's see, what club should we hit first? There's Club Was, there's Wrong.
Those places shut down a long time ago.
Oh no.
Oh no, shut down too. There's Where? Where's Where?
Where's where was, isn't it?
No, Was wasn't where was. Was where Wrong was, right?
Okay.
Not okay. That place is lame.
And that to me is like so interesting because it is really just like write what you know, write what you're familiar with. And I feel like so often, like if you're trying to create content on something that you are just not familiar with, like the people experiencing that situation, like it's not going to feel true. It's not going to feel real. But anyway, B said the best way for other writers to get our attention in the writer's room is to say, I know this story about this friend of mine. That stuff always ends up working much better on air. So like I said, it's like the whole idea of write what you know. Like Bay said, if you're going to pitch someone and say, give me millions of dollars to write 100 or 200 episodes, you better have material. So he said, mine your life. We were just writing a little bit ahead of where the characters were and watching them catch up to us. So they definitely did weave in parts of their real lives. Like the characters are based on them and their friends in New York. Even the band they were in, the Solids, wrote and performed the theme song. So looking back, Thomas said, How I Met Your Mother wasn't the funniest show. It wasn't a joke machine like The Big Bang Theory. The thing I take away is, how do you do something that maybe nobody else is doing? Find your little superpower that only your show can do and do it. So How I Met Your Mother is exactly what it sounds like, right? So it's a story of how Ted Mosby, played by Josh Radnor, met the mother of his children. And it's narrated by older Ted, voiced by Bob Saget.
Kids, for a brief period when I was 7, my best friend was a balloon. It was the classic story. Boy meets balloon. Boy and balloon become friends. Boy loses balloon when mom sets out hot dogs in the backyard. No! Decades later, Boy's new best friend finds out about the whole thing and never lets him live it down.
I hate you so much.
The whole thing taught me a lesson. If you love something, you can never let it go, not even for a second.
And the story is told in flashbacks and flash forwards. So this is another thing I feel like we've talked about in Remarkable before, is like non-linear storytelling, where you're like jumping back and forth, or you're telling a story in a circle, things like that, I think make for really interesting storytelling. But the thing that blew my mind was that because the story would end after Ted meets his future wife, because I was like thinking about this, I was like, wait, the whole idea of this whole series is like, the story would end, right? Like the series would be done, but the show goes on for 9 years. And so because it aired from 2005 to 2014, like you don't find out, is this true, Kelly? You don't find out until season 9, because I haven't seen the whole thing. You don't find out until season 9 who the mother is. And I was reading like people were super disappointed in the finale. Well, I guess spoiler alert, right? But I guess people have had a chance to listen or to watch. But Kelly, is that true? Like you don't find out, or Ian, you don't find out until season 9 who the mother is.
Mm-hmm. That's 100% right. And it just goes to show that people are interested in the journey, not just the end. And there's so many complex stories within the bigger story that is told in this sitcom. And they do it in such a way that every episode you're wondering, what's going to happen? What's next? How is this connected to how he met his wife, right? But it's super fascinating that they were able to make the show last that long. But again, it's because what they do is they bring you in with this really compelling, interesting topic.
Guess who I ran into?
Maury Povich.
No, a girl from my past. Any guesses?
Stella,
Zoe.
Karen?
the girl who beat you up.
The girl who ruined a photo with Slash.
The girl who made you get the butterfly tattoo?
Why you make it sound like I've dated a series of Stieg Larsson novels.
The girl who shared a bed with her brother.
The girl who did porn.
The girl who ran over the hitchhiker?
The girl who had crazy eyes.
The girl who gave you throw pillows.
The girl who gave you the lamp?
The girl who gave you 12 mixtapes.
The girl I slept with first.
And then as you're progressing through the show, you realize like, oh, wait, this is way more than just about How I Met Your Mother. We'll talk about it more, but I feel like that's very aligned with the content marketing world.
Yeah, I think it just answers like a fundamental question that every single kid has asked their parent at some time, which is like, how did you meet dad? How did you meet mom? You know, like,
Kids, I'm going to tell you an incredible story. The story of how I met your mother.
and so I think that taking that simple sort of premise is so smart, and it gives the show this very familiar structure that you get sort of this like ongoing bit which lasted 9 years, like every single episode ending in something that, you know, is not the reason why that they met. And it's just a brilliantly simple, like elegant setup that, you know, obviously you love the characters and you love all this, you know, the background and the city and all that stuff, but it just is so familiar and sort of like elemental that I think that's part of the reason why it works so well. And it's like, you know, Charlie Brown and the football, right? You know she's going to pull the football away every single episode, that you're not going to find out who it is. And yet, you know, every single time you watch till the end of the episode, and like there's that 0.001% chance that you're going to find out. It's also interesting that he said that it was different, because I feel like the show is almost not different at all to any other show, except for the premise, like except for the sort of setup and the flashback. But I mean, how different is it really from Friends or from, you know, any show where there's 3 dudes and 1 gal or 2 gals or, you know, whatever? It's like, how different is it really? I don't know. I'd probably say not that much, but they have this one very simple premise that makes it really easy to understand, I think.
What's really interesting is that I never got into Friends. Like I never got into Seinfeld or any of those really popular sitcom shows, which I don't know. I feel like it says a lot that I watched the entire How I Met Your Mother series. And I think what was really remarkable about the show is that they had this really simple premise, this really simple structure, but I feel like every episode was a little bit of a surprise.
Every now and then, I am gonna lie to you. I just am. If it's in the interest of an amazing surprise, that is. You're gonna get bamboozled, hoodwinked. Heck, I'll just say it. You're gonna get snowed.
The way that the message of every episode was really unique in the way that they like cast the show. Like they have Barney as a character who was the most outlandish character.
Barney's team seems way more fun.
Nonsense.
Candy for everyone! Okay, Team Animal House, who wants to try a cigar?
And arguably the star of the show and what made the show really memorable. And I feel like a lot of people wanted to go back because it was so entertaining. And I think that because the writers were pulling from their actual experiences, you could feel that as a watcher. Like you could feel the authenticity in the script, the interactions and the references and all of that. So it felt more real to life than the other sitcom shows, which felt more forced, or almost like they were writing a script that they felt the audience wanted to hear versus a script that actually mirrored reality.
Yeah, that's a really interesting take. And I think that's probably true. I mean, Seinfeld aside, I do feel like, you know, a lot of those shows have these sort of moments that, you know, are familiar. But yeah, this show feels so lived in because it's like real moments clearly from the writer's room as they've talked about, of stuff that's actually happened. And I think that's why it feels authentic, is because it actually is.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's talk marketing lessons. Kelly, what are some marketing takeaways from How I Met Your Mother?
Ooh, okay, that's a good question. The first one, really simple, just stand out and be refreshingly unique to your audience. One of the strongest elements of How I Met Your Mother is the script. The writing reflects how people actually talk to each other in real life. It's actually drawing from the writer's real experiences, but at the same time, it's refreshingly witty. And I touched on this 2 seconds ago about who I thought the main star was, which was Barney, this outlandish comical character. He's just unconventional. So it made the show more memorable and unique, and it gave it more personality.
What's the matter with you? I'm his girlfriend, and I'm not even trying that hard. Way to wreck the curve, kiss ass.
Robin, I'm his best friend. That's a commitment. Girlfriend, that's like a bad flu. Out of your system after a couple weeks in bed. High five.
And so many B2B companies, in my opinion, struggle with standing out. In order to be memorable, we have to be different. Everybody knows this. Be different in our voice and tone. Be different in our philosophy. Don't regurgitate what similar businesses are doing. But I think a lot of businesses struggle with actually executing on this. And they can do that by taking a stance on an issue, voicing their perspective on a hot topic, highlighting their in-house experts, and doing it with a sense of humor and lightness. And I think that's where How I Met Your Mother really nailed it, because they would cover complex topics, emotional topics.
You can't design your life like a building. It doesn't work that way. You just have to live it, and it'll design itself.
So what, I should just do nothing?
No, listen to what the world is telling you to do and take the leap.
But then there was always some levity toward the end to really balance things out. They didn't take themselves too seriously. So that was one. My other one is know your end goal or vision and ensure that everything comes together to meet that vision. So spoiler alert, the writers knew How I Met Your Mother was going to end. And every episode led up to that moment where, oh, Ted actually likes Robin and he wants to end up with her, right? And that was kind of a big surprise at the end and had nothing to do with how he met his wife.
And that, kids, is How I Met Your Mother.
That's it.
That's it.
No, I don't buy it. That is not the reason you made us listen to this.
Oh, really? And what's the reason?
Let's look at the facts here. You made us sit down and listen to the story about how you met Mom, yet Mom is hardly in the story. No, this is a story about how you're totally in love with Aunt Robin. And you're thinking about asking her out, and you want to know if we're okay with it.
And when I think about content, I think about don't create siloed content and knocking one tactic out at a time, which is a problem I've seen at a lot of organizations, but instead look at the entire journey and the story end to end in the same way that How I Met Your Mother producers knew what the end was going to be and what their vision was going to be, and all the episodes in between led up to that. So when it comes to content and just marketing in general, look at the entire journey end to end from a user's perspective, and then figure out how each touch point connects to deliver an amazing experience. And I feel like it's important to talk more tactically about what that looks like, right? So you could figure out how to bring someone in organically. Is it through a guide, a YouTube video? How to keep them with you? So is it a series on a podcast or a series on a blog, right? That's where How I Met Your Mother did a really good job of having this simple premise and this simple structure, but making it so that people always wanted to go back to them and see what the rest of the story was going to be.
And that, kids, was the perfect ending to a perfect love story. It just wasn't mine. Mine was still out there, waiting for me.
And then how to build people's confidence in you. So showing social proof, showing the world that others have decided that you're worth their time. And then after they've converted and decided to invest in you, how are you supporting them? And how are you giving them opportunities to provide feedback and just responses to how things can be better? And then the third one, I promise I'll keep it short, Ian. Be the thing that people always want to come back to. So the kids in How I Met Your Mother, don't quote me on this, Meredith, but I think they filmed the last scene in 2006. So the creators, like I said, they knew how it would end. Every episode from start to finish led to that end. The show's not just about how he meets his wife, which is honestly a pretty unremarkable topic. We're talking about how two people know each other. And you think that the journey is a linear one, but what captivates so much of us is the stories within the story and that sort of non-linear journey.
The time is funny. And sometimes a little magical. They could take a stupid decision and turn it into something else entirely. Because kids, as you know, that house is this house.
And so when I think about that, I think about points of application for marketers. So in the worlds of content marketing, it's not enough to just identify one topic, right? But to go deeper and look at the related topics that people are interested in learning more about. So like, this is a really basic example, but say somebody wants to become a baker. They have ingredients at home to bake cupcakes. So they do some research on how to bake a cupcake, right? But it's not enough to just produce content or assets that just talk about how to bake a cupcake. You have to also talk about, what types of cupcakes you can bake, what tools you should consider investing versus not investing, tips on keeping the cupcakes fresh, right? There's multiple pieces of content you can create to sort of offer this complete package and resource of information for somebody. So yeah, I think there's a lot that we can learn from How I Met Your Mother. Obviously, I could probably talk about it for 5 more hours, but I won't.
So yeah, I want to focus on Barney a little bit for my first marketing takeaway here, which is, as you mentioned, like, he makes the show, right? It's like there just isn't enough sort of dynamism, I think, in the show without him.
Suits are full of joy. They're the sartorial equivalent of a baby's smile.
Sartorial.
Of or pertaining to tailors or their trades. Suits are for the living. That's why when it's my time to RIP, I'm going out of this world the same way I came into it. Buck naked. Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. Open bar for the guys, open casket for the ladies. What up?
And obviously he does all sorts of ridiculous things, some of them not so great. And we love him anyways. And I think that it's so true to having the crazy friend. And that's why it feels authentic, right? It's like, especially in your 20s, and whether it's someone from college or whether it's someone that, you meet that becomes part of your friend group, or maybe it's someone from high school or whatever, that it's sort of they're an asshole, but they're our asshole sort of thing. So like, we love him for that, despite how crazy he is. And we forgive sort of all of the transgressions, and it's a TV show. So, it's not real anyways. But I think what's so interesting is that the Barney that we know and love was not what the show creators wanted, that they created a different character. And when they went to casting and Neil Patrick Harris came in for the role, that it was supposed to be like a big cigar smoking dude looking like Jack Black.
And I was in the hallway with these other actors. I thought, this is ridiculous. This is an LA actor's story right now, because I'm just gonna go in and not get the job. And I sat in traffic all day for another audition I'm not gonna get. And so I didn't really care. I didn't think I was gonna get it. So I went in, I said hey to them, and it was the laser tag scene. So I was just like, I think I did a dive roll and like knocked into their desk. And I think that worked. They liked it. And they thought, as good writers do, they thought, well, it doesn't have to be this. It could actually maybe be this.
And it's just crazy to me, because I think that's part of the reason why the character is so successful, is because it's him. And if it was, Jack Black, let's just say, for example, Jack Black's amazing, so it would have been a totally different character. But I think that their group needed someone suave and sophisticated and, constantly, chasing girls around and doing all that stuff to fill out to have that like level of sort of craziness. And I think the other thing too is because you had, they really did not want to copy Friends, and he's the opposite of Joey, right? And he's also the opposite of Kramer. he's blonde. He was like this child star, so we all knew who he was from Doogie Howser. He's super smart and he's super ridiculous, and has all these catchphrases and everything.
You're my best friend, Barney.
Good. And as your best friend, I suggest we play a little game I like to call Have You Met Ted? No. Hi. Have you met Ted? Hi. Have you met Ted? Hi. Have you met Ted? Have you met Ted?
And I just think that because of all that, it created a character that's like totally different. And I think that the other version of it would not have worked as well. And the marketing sort of takeaway there is to sort of just like ratchet up the ridiculous stories. Like, I think my biggest takeaway for this from a marketing perspective is like, go ask people real stories and then just like, turn them up a few degrees. If you're trying to get customer stories or anecdotes or things like that, or if you want to go like behind the scenes and ask some of your customers, like, hey, I have a few questions for me. This is off the record. Take those stories, ratchet it up, make your versions of the Barneys of the world that are ridiculous, because like we know those type of people, and I think we understand what it's like to work with them or have them in our lives.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more.
Meredith, thoughts on Barney?
Just that I think you're right, is that like he really needs to have his own take on the character to stand out. And I was reading something about like they said his audition was like, I don't remember what the word they used, like something about like gymnastics or theatrical or something like that. And the one thing they said was like he left a footprint on the wall. And it's like that's how like physical his audition was. And I think sometimes you just have to like go all out with something different.
Meredith, you're right about that, because I was doing research too about Neil Patrick Harris's audition, and the audition was the laser scene. So he like laser tag.
Oh.
Yeah, he went like all out, just like you said. He was just like, well, whatever. Like, I'm not going to get it anyway. Let me just like go for it. And he ended up getting it.
Yeah. There's something about like when you have nothing to lose and you just like let it rip, like you could end up with a totally unique something, and that was his audition.
I love that line that you just said of when you don't have anything to lose, because I feel like when you go into things fearlessly, the result is just so much stronger and more powerful and more memorable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
They also had like some ridiculous actors in this show that I feel like we have to address, and that like Allison Hannigan was like straight up already famous from Buffy, for those of you who watched Buffy religiously, meaning myself. And so she was already famous. And I remember when she went to that show and I was like, dang, my girl's leaving Buffy, this stuff. Jason Segel's now Jason Segel, who we know, and but he he's amazing.
You want to make me jealous, so you're making up a story about Jenkins.
I'm not making this up. This happened. That woman kissed me with tongue. Her tongue was in my mouth.
Sure it was.
It was thick and rough like a starfish arm.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I'm just gonna go over there and punch her right in the nose, give her a knuckle sandwich. Come on, baby. You want some soup?
It happened. Do you have any split pea left?
And I forget her actual name, but Robin Kobe
Smulders. Yep.
Yeah. She's fantastic. And of course, Josh Radnor's great. And I think they have sort of the right mix there. But again, you could kind of say that of a lot of different groups of this sort of type of show. And they filled it with, amazing cast and amazing writing and these really authentic stories. But my next sort of like marketing takeaway there goes back to the premise that the difference between Friends, which is a great show, it's an iconic show, so maybe we shouldn't compare it to that. But the difference between Friends and How I Met Your Mother, or even like Big Bang Theory, it's just How I Met Your Mother is so much easier to explain to a friend.
7 years ago when Marshall and Lily got engaged, Ted saw Robin across a crowded room, and I said, oh yeah, you just know she likes it dirty, but Ted really liked her, so we played Have You Met Ted? They went to dinner, he walked her home, should have kissed her, didn't lame. So he stole a Smurf penis, went back to her place, should have kissed her, didn't lame. He threw 3 parties, they kissed on the roof, but decided to be friends, lame. Then Ted wanted to take Robin to a wedding. She couldn't go, he went alone and met Victoria, didn't kiss her either, lame. Not a great closer, Ted. But he finally kissed her, they started dating, she went to Germany, Ted kissed Robin, lost Victoria, Ted did a rain dance, got Robin, Ted and Robin broke up, Robin moved to Brazil, came back with a Latin stud, Ted got jealous, got a tramp stamp, not really relevant to the story, I just like mentioning that as much as possible. I hooked up with Robin, Ted and I stopped being friends, Ted got hit by a bus, we made up. Robin and I started dating, I got fat, her hair fell out. We broke up, Robin dated Dawn, I dated Nora, cheated on her with Robin, I dumped Nora, Robin dated Kevin, but not for long, and then I met you, and you took my grandpa's watch, but I fell in love with you anyway, and you let me fart in front of you, and I asked you to marry me, and you said yes, and we came over here to meet little Marvin, and that's everything. Also, I went on The Price is Right, and I want a dune buggy.
And it's like, I remember my buddy was a fan of Big Bang Theory and How I Met Your Mother, and I watched like 5 minutes of Big Bang Theory, and I was like, this just isn't for me. Whereas with How I Met Your Mother, like, again, it's just so much easier to explain that show. And even, of course, Big Bang Theory was insane. I think it was like the #1 show on TV, and it's still pretty easy to explain. And it has a pretty strong sort of premise in and of itself. But it's just so easy. And I think that we, as marketers, we want to try to find stuff that's good out there, and we want to try to differentiate it. And to me, it's like it goes back to like structure and like adding a little hook that makes it easier for the audience to understand. And maybe it's a question, or maybe it's like, you know, answering that one single question, and that's the name of the show. It's also called How I Met Your Mother, which is a pretty long name. But I feel like TV shows were kind of like doing longer names back then, because I think you had I'm blanking on the name of the show, but it's also very different from Friends. So like, which, like, again, because it's such an iconic show, you don't think about, they literally named a show Friends. Like, could we get more generic? It's like when they made the show Girls, and you're like, hey, Friends worked really well, let's make Girls. But like, if you were a B2B company and you named your product or your stuff Friends, you'd be like, at least like Friendster or whatever is what ended up happening. But think of how differentiated that is from How I Met Your Mother, or something like The League, which is, you know, about a fantasy football league, or, you know, Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which is, again, super long name and a ridiculous name, and is a totally different type of a show. And so, yeah, I just think that it's so important to have that structure, and that as marketers, like, you need to find that hook, that, you know, that structure that keeps people coming back. Otherwise, it's just really hard to bring people back.
I always challenge writers to think about, like, what is their angle? It's not enough to just write a piece about, I'll just use an AssemblyAI example. Like, it's not enough to just be like, oh, what is a good speech to text model? You have to make sure that the piece of content is really layered and it's comprehensive, because somebody that's thinking about a speech to text model is likely thinking about a bunch of other questions after that. And you got to make sure that you're not only considering all of those things, but that you then cover it in a way that's unique. And like you said, there's some kind of a hook. And for me, I think it's also takeaways, like what can they learn from it and what can they take with them? Because like How I Met Your Mother, I don't know about you guys, but when I watch How I Met Your Mother, you know what I take away from it? Laughter and joy. Okay. Oh, and also so many folks will refer to lines from that show to this day.
I bet even Cro-Magnons used to give cave hookers like an extra fish for putting out.
Aha, so then the oldest profession would be fisherman. Kaboom! You've been lawyered.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I had that in my notes as well, and I didn't really know how to like say this, but like create a catchphrase.
Yes.
You know, it's like, it's so important, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Does anyone have any catchphrases in your life, or things that people say often?
Not really.
So my wife had a catchphrase for like a month, and she would just go, well, it's just the way the cookie crumbles. And like she said, it's sort of like in jest, but it would be like an answer to every single thing. And so now I always say that that's her catchphrase. It's like anything, you know, it's like whatever the, you know, And it's like obviously a very common thing that people say, although never would they actually say it out loud or seriously. And especially when something sort of goes wrong that's completely within your control. You're like, why didn't the trash go out today? And you're like, it's just the way the cookie crumbles. And you're like, no, it's not. The cookie doesn't crumble because you forgot to put out the trash.
Or like
the cookie crumbled because you broke it. You broke the cookie.
Or turn lemons into lemonade. I say that a lot. Or I've said it in the past. I wouldn't say a lot.
Yeah. Anyways, like it's endearing. And it's, what's the phrase that David Mamet uses, which I think is something that Shakespeare said, which is something unexpected and inevitable. Is that way? That's what your story should be. Unexpected and inevitable. That's how like the end of your story should be. But it's kind of that way with Barney, right? Where it's like he wants to watch the world burn, right? He wants to do all this stuff, and that's what Neil Patrick Harris said. He just wants to do a bunch of crazy stuff and then sit back and watch it happen.
I'm teaching Ted how to live. And lucky you, I have room for one more student. Think of me as Yoda. Only instead of being little and green, I wear suits and I'm awesome. I'm your bro. I'm Broda.
But the catchphrase is like, you know that it's coming. And then when it does, surprise and delight, which is great. So yeah, I don't know the takeaway there. Just do more catchphrases.
Yeah.
Be funny.
The other thing too that I feel like made Barney really successful is that he was kind of that crazy character, but he had these moments where you're like, oh yeah, he's also a human being with feelings and a complex story and, interests and desires and all of these things. And I feel like the writers did a good job of balancing that out.
I don't believe this. You were in love with Robin, you find out she's single, and your reaction is bummer?
What do you want me to say, Ted? Whatever I thought was there, she thought differently. So, no, I don't care that Robin is single again.
If it was only focused on him being crazy and silly, it wouldn't be, I think, as relatable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that speaks to the heart of the character. And one of the creators, Craig Thomas, has said about Barney that he's a pretty fragile character who's afraid of being alone, and he wants everyone to like him. And that's ultimately like your crazy friend wants to be seen. You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason why every single over the top actor ever does the things that they do is they want to be seen. The crazy friend always wants to be seen. They want to be at the center of things, and because they're insecure, right? That's how it is. And we know that about him, and there is like heart there between despicable things, and we know that people do despicable things from time to time, and they mistreat their friends or mistreat other people or strangers or whatever, and they're still your friend anyways. All right, let's talk AssemblyAI. How do you think about your content strategy?
My content strategy is really simple. It's just about showing up where people are and have a vested interest in what matters to them, and then deliver really useful information that people are actively looking for from the start of their journey until the end. By making someone's experience with us easy, so easy to start, easy to try our API, easy to test things out in the playground, easy to do independent research because maybe they don't want to talk to a salesperson. A lot of people don't. And then providing tools and resources that give them what they're looking for right away. We're building a foundation of trust with all of these people where this person's going to remember us as this no-nonsense helper, basically, and hopefully leader. And then when they are ready to build with us, if they're not ready to do that yet, they're going to remember us because we were the ones who were there for them while other people were, giving them a sales pitch. And so that's always been my philosophy because I've been in content marketing for so long. I always think about what are the pain points for our customers and what do they care about and how can I help them? So I take this very nurture first, empathetic approach to my strategy. And obviously I'm giving you that very high level overarching description of how I think about content, but that has never steered me wrong.
I do want to issue a correction, by the way. David Mamet said it, and it's about Aristotle, not Shakespeare, who said surprising and inevitable, which is great. So you mentioned getting in front of people sort of like where they are. How do you think of like where people are? Where are they consuming your stuff?
Google. You probably have heard of like dark social, right? Like
Sure.
Like Reddit, Discord, X, LinkedIn, direct messages on all of those platforms. And so for me, like my focus is really on increasing organic visibility and making sure that like if someone's searching for something, we're one of the first people to help answer that question. We're a small startup. We're only like 110 people. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in front of us to expand our team and like invest in other areas to hopefully conduct more community outreach and really like get plugged in. We do have like an active Discord community. And so, you know, we have folks at Assembly AI that connect with real people that are using our models.
Yeah. What's working for you right now? What types of content? What topics?
How-tos, tutorials, listicles, right? Like best speech to text models, right? Listing the different models or companies that people can consider. I think one thing that's really important to know is when I have my team produce some of this content, we don't want it to be salesy. We don't want it to sound self-promotional. So that's why I'm always saying, like, I take the stance of how can we truly help somebody by giving them all the information that they need to help them make an informed decision. And I think by taking that approach, we're able to create content that's just really honest and more original because we're not trying to get someone to buy our product at the end of the blog post. We're really just understanding that this is where they're at in their journey and we want to be as helpful to them as we can because it is really difficult to conduct research on your own. It can be frustrating because what tends to happen is you'll land on an article about one topic, then you have to do research all over again to figure out what answers are available to your other questions. So I'm always thinking about, again, how can we be comprehensive in what we provide? And then providing that educational material in different formats. So I've always said, if my team's going to build content and produce content, let's make sure that it helps to accelerate the education and learning process for people that are reading our content. So we offer teachings, they consume and they learn, and ultimately they grow with us. And that's basically what's working right now.
What about any favorite pieces of content that you've done in the past couple of years?
We talked about it right before this call, but top of mind for me right now is Assembly AI just launched our Universal One model. So in simpler terms, it's basically our latest speech to text AI model. And it's our most accurate model yet. And so it's really top of mind because we spent months and months and months prepping for this. It's a huge research and engineering accomplishment. And it was one of my favorites to date simply because, you know, I had an opportunity to work with our designer. Our designer worked with an animator for the first time. We were able to put out a marketing video to go hand in hand with copy, which the company has never done before. When it was time to think about the story for this video, I really thought carefully about the important principles of storytelling and just like video creation, which is to bring people straight into the action and really getting to the heart of who cares. I'm sure you guys can relate to this, but like, you know, when people are creating content, a lot of times as we're in that creative process, we might end up with 3 paragraphs of fluff material, that intro material, because you haven't really figured out how you want to start the piece. And one of the things I remember learning many moons ago when it came to video production is basically like, don't ramp up an intro, like just get straight into the action. Yeah, with our marketing video, we ended up just showing humans interacting and speaking with each other, helping people understand how important it is to understand speech and how speech is the foundation for building connections and all of that. So that was the strategy for that piece of content and that campaign overall. And it was just a lot of fun. I was able to just be in the weeds, do some storyboarding with our designer, and it was a blast.
I'm curious because, second to last question here, obviously speech to AI is so new, or speech to text is so new in terms of the accuracy and the quality that you're doing at AssemblyAI. It's like speech to text has been around for forever, but it's always been bad. And it's like, if it's a little bit bad, it's like really bad, right? And so I'm just curious, like, because you're at sort of the cutting edge, is there any other sorts of things that you think about to try to educate people about like what's possible now? I mean, I'm sure that's kind of all of your content, but I just, you have such a cooler thing to talk about, I think, because it's so in the zeitgeist and it's so important for everybody.
Oh, that's such a good question, Ian. And it's something that takes up so much of my time of every day in a good way, because I love doing this. And basically, when I joined not too long ago, I joined last August. One of the things that I recognized right away was that there was this existing content gap where we had not yet shared or educated people around what is possible with speech AI technology. We did a great, tremendous job talking to the developer community, thanks to our DevRel team. But for me, like as someone that's not a coder and not a developer, I really was like, well, wait, there's a whole segment of our audience that we're kind of forgetting here. And so every day I'm really thinking about like, how can telehealth platforms leverage speech AI technology? How can virtual meetings platforms leverage speech AI technology? And then we get really specific. So on a general level, we're kind of like, here's an overview of speech AI technology. Here's why it's useful for your business. But then we get really specific. So I'll talk about specific capabilities like PII redaction or sentiment analysis. And then I'll point people to, what the specific models they could leverage for their business. And as I continue to work at AssemblyAI, I really want to create guides and more detailed resources that really help decision makers understand what can these models actually accomplish for them specifically. And that's going to require, Ian and Meredith, I'm sure, it's going to require a lot of work to get that detailed across so many sub-industries and industries. So a lot of work ahead.
Yeah, a lot of work ahead indeed. Kelly, it's been wonderful having you on the show. Final question here, just any advice for fellow heads of content?
Ooh. My advice would be don't do what everyone else is doing. So throughout my career, I've often heard so-and-so is doing something cool and we should do that. But my advice is to not look so much outside for inspiration and really start not only within and trusting your instincts, but starting with your customers, figuring out what they need, give it to them in a really memorable way, and then think about like how you can foster and make connections. So instead of doing what everyone's doing, just try to focus on what few people are doing so that you can really help the organization stand out. And so a podcast series, a community support chat, something that goes beyond sort of what everyone else is doing. So just don't do what everyone else is doing is my advice, and trust your instincts.
This is awesome. Thanks so much, Kelly. Appreciate it. And we will talk to you soon. This is almost how we met Kelly Moon. I don't know. I got nothing.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ian and Meredith.
Later.
Bye.
I think I need to go home and reevaluate how I make life decisions.
Okay, come on. I have to go back to work. Let's split a cab.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, And our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise.